Hi everyone, it's Dean here. Welcome to what is, of course, part 6 of our Introduction to Go series. And in our last video, we introduced the concept of life and death, and we're going to be building on that here. So you may remember that the group at the top left here is a group with a single eye of 3 liberties, and that usually Black's strategy to try and kill this group would be to play on that central liberty. I'll mark it with an X, denying White of the possibility of making 2 eyes. Now, in this situation, this wouldn't quite work, and the reason being is that White is so unimpeded on the outside that White can simply extend elsewhere and create 2 eyes for himself somewhere else on the board. So what we're talking about here is a White group that is technically alive simply because it's just unfeasible for Black to capture this group. If Black was to try and surround the group, White would simply play at the point marked X, and if Black was to play there, of course, as we've discussed, White can simply extend elsewhere on the board, creating eyes somewhere else. So let's have a look at a group where we have a different situation, and you'll recognize this sort of group from our previous video as well. This is, of course, a group with a single eye, 3 liberties in size, and of course the life and death situation of this group hangs on who can play at that marked point with an X. We call this group unsettled simply because its status relies on who's got the move in this situation. And this is best illustrated if we introduce another unsettled group at the bottom right here. Of course, this group also has that same key point. I'll mark that with an X. And the point being is that if Black was to kill the group at the top right there by denying it 2 eyes, White could then save and give life to the group at the bottom right by playing that essential point himself. So is this all there is to it? Well, there's one concept we have to look at first, and we'll introduce another group here at the bottom left. Those of you who have seen the previous video may think that this group is alive because, of course, we have these 1 and 2 eyes here. However, things are not all as they seem. The reason being is that Black can simply play like so, putting the mark stone in Atari. What that means is that even though White has 2 eyes, I'll mark them A and B, the eye at A can be closed off by Black. In other words, Black's forcing White to fill in that eye now, and we call that a false eye. So, of course, White would be forced to play at A now, leaving White with only 1 eye left, allowing Black to capture the group. So, how does this pan out in an actual game situation? Well, let's have a look at this position here. Both players have formed a long wall through the center of the board, demarking a part of the board as their territory. And of course, if the game was to finish here, we'd assume that White would win in this situation because White's territory is sizably bigger. So for that reason, Black can, of course, be very tempted to go and invade this territory and try and create life for himself here. So we'll see, of course, that this group very quickly becomes unsettled, and the key judgment call for Black before making the invasion would have been whether or not Black would be capable of making life. If Black is able to create 2 eyes here, then this group can live, and Black will have successfully taken these points away from White. However, if White is able to kill this group, White will not just have won the territory back. However, if White is able to do so with the minimum stones, White's going to gain a hell of a lot of points through prisoners as well. So this Black unsettled group at the moment looks likely to try and make 2 eyes at, I'll mark them 1 and 2 here. Now, this is a key situation for this unsettled group because it looks essential for White now to play at the point marked A. If White plays at this point, this triangled stone would be in Atari, and it would force Black to fill in one of his 2 eyes, rendering it, of course, a false eye. Let's have a look at an example where White's going to make an error here and not play at that point A, but instead play here instead. Now, this is going to give Black the opportunity to live now and create 2 eyes for themselves, but I'd like to give you the ability to find the correct move for yourself. So take a few seconds here, and where would you play for black? Would you play at A, B, or C? Well, let's have a look at each of them in turn. We'll see that playing at A is an unsuccessful try for black, because white can simply go on the attack and force black to fill in his eyes. So of course in this situation white can now play here, putting these 3 black stones in Atari and forcing black to fill in one of their eyes like so. And of course we see now that this black group only has 1 eye, and that white's going to be able to very easily surround this group and take it prisoner. So if that isn't correct, let's go back a few moves and see what would happen if black played at B. I think B is probably the most natural choice here, because we want to stop white from playing there. However, after B the situation is very much the same. White can simply play straight in that central liberty of the 3 liberty eye, thus robbing black of the ability to create 2 eyes of their own. So of course if black tries to escape over here now, we can simply close that off, creating a position from our previous variation. And if black goes in for the capture here, we can see very easily that this group is only going to have 1 eye, and that white is going to be able to take him prisoner. So of course, going back to our original position, we can see that the correct move here is going to be to play at C. Now, interestingly, this actually prevents white from playing at the point we'd marked B in the first place, because of course a white stone played at B is going to be in Atari. So even if white now tries to come into that square, black can simply close him off, and you can see that black has successfully created 1 and 2 eyes. Black's invasion has been successful. So you may ask, what's to stop white from doing a similar invasion at the top of the board here? Well, the answer to that question is the stone I'll mark with an A. This defensive stone really shores up black's territory and ensures that if white was to invade, white would have a lot of trouble creating 2 eyes. Let's just quickly try and imagine where these eyes might be. Perhaps white might, if I remove these 2 numbers here, perhaps white could create 1 eye here, and perhaps white could create another eye here. However, this is obviously going to rely on black being very gracious and not interfering with white's plans. So a key idea when we're talking about invasions is judging whether or not we're going to have space to make our groups live, and whether or not we're going to have the tactical know-how to play the correct moves in these instances. I hope that you've really understood this concept of life and death. It's going to come up again and again as you play Go. And meanwhile, we're ready now to look at the last rule of Go, and we'll do that in our next video.